I do it. Oh, you got it. Very good. Okay, perfect. Okay, this week's class is chapter 4 of Tanya. And it's speaking about how the soul functions. So it's not speaking about the essence of the soul, because the essence of the soul we spoke about in chapter 3. Chapter 2, we discussed how the soul is unique and how the human species is unique, and only the human species have this unique soul. And we call this unique soul a part of godliness. Chapter 3 is we started sort of quantifying the, so to speak, the biology of the soul, and we explained it has intellect and it has emotions. The intellect has 3 parts. We explained why the third part, da'as, understanding, and knowledge, is crucial to the 3-part component of the intellect. And we explained that that is the platform and the basis to have the emotions, which are the offshoots of the intellect. And we explained that the wisdom is the father, Bina is the mother, which is the developing anecdote, so to speak, of whatever we're trying to figure out, whether it's mathematics, history, relationships, or godliness or religion. And das is the application we connect to it. And if you have those 3 magic ingredients, then you can develop a love and an awe and a respect and things like that for your significant other, for your friends, for God, for religion, and things like that. So that was the soul. And we said it has 10 parts corresponding to the 10 sefirot that God used, so to speak, to create the world. And we are a representation of those godly 10 dimensions. So those are the 10 sefirot in our soul. Now, what if I decided to do nothing with my life? I'm going to be a couch potato, and I have what we call this unique soul that we explained in chapter 2 and chapter 3, what could be done with it. And now I decide, let's just say, to do nothing. So obviously we're squandering the soul. We're squandering the opportunity and the possibility to do things. On the other hand, when we want to do things and we want to use the soul for the benefit of our relationship with God or with our spouse and things like that, all those examples we gave in chapter 3. So we must use either one of these next 3 faculties, or in here we call them garments. In the terminology of Kabbalah, we call them livushim. It's a garment, and it's either machshava, dibur, or maisa, thought, speech, or action. Anything that I do, or that I'm going to meditate, I'm going to walk around the block, I'm going to speak nicely or not nicely, you're going to be using either one of those 3 garments, machshava, dibur, and maisa. So let's look a little bit in the actual text of the author of the Tanya. And I'm going to share this screen. And let's see if this works. And let's see a little bit of what he has to say. And then we will sort of unpack it ourselves. In addition to its 10 faculties discussed in chapter 3, every divine soul possesses 3 garments. The garments are thought, speech, and action as they find expression in the 613 commandments of the Torah. The Alter Rebbe, who is the author of this book, goes on to explain how the divine soul expresses itself through these garments. For when a person actively fulfills all the precepts which require physical action like tefillin or tzitzit, and with his power of speech or her power of her speech, she occupies himself in expounding all the 613 commandments and the laws governing their fulfillments. Let's just continue a little bit more, and then we'll bring it down to modern day English. And with his power of thought, he comprehends all that he is capable of understanding in the Pardes, which is the 4 levels of the Torah. I'm just going to move a little bit more. And the midot, namely the emotions of fear and love of the Almighty, together with their offshoots and ramifications, are clothed in the fulfillment of the commandments in deed and in word, meaning in the study of Torah, which is the equivalent of all the commandments. I'm going to stop my screen, and let's understand this a little bit. When we were younger, and we wanted to know if our teacher in school that day was going to be in a good mood. He was wearing a blue suit. And we knew if he came to school wearing a brown pinstripe suit, we were in trouble because he was in a bad mood. Sometimes it's pretty clear when a person is wearing garments, it is an expression of how the person's attitude is that day or that moment. If you're wearing a beautiful dress and you have lipstick on, especially if you have high heels, naturally your friend is going to ask you, wow, where are you heading off to tonight? Because typically, if you're going out to Starbucks, you don't dress like that. Or if you're going out to the bowling alley, you don't dress like that. So wearing a certain type of garments and clothing automatically puts you into this category of, wow, you're going somewhere special. Or if, like this Sunday, I'm going to take my boys to Little League and they're all going to be wearing their caps and their cleat shoes and so forth. And their father is going to be wearing a high baseball cap with a t-shirt. So naturally, you know, Mendel Schwartz is not off to synagogue and the children are not off to school, but they're going to Little League. So even though my children or you wearing lipstick with the dress or me wearing a high cap with a t-shirt, we didn't say anything. We didn't even intimate to you what we're going to do, but you simply knew by the way we were dressing with the garments we put on, where we were off to. And what our attitude, what we're doing, what we're ready to do. So garments are very much connected to how we're feeling and what we're doing and so forth. It doesn't quite capture the essence of Mendel Schwartz. Because I'm wearing a t-shirt, it doesn't mean I'm a baseball player. Because I'm wearing a high cap, it doesn't mean that I'm off to the baseball field, most likely, but it doesn't mean for sure. And it certainly doesn't mean I'm a professional baseball player. My children are playing every single day of the week. You're not capturing the essence of a woman because she's wearing lipstick and she's wearing a long dress with special shoes. That's not who she is. She's simply expressing herself, what she plans on doing or what she is doing at the moment. So thus the Kabbalah calls thought, speech, and action the garments of your soul. So let's try to further articulate this. Give me 1 minute. I'm just going to put myself on mute for 1 moment. Okay. So again, in order for me to do a mitzvah, let's say the mitzvah at hand is to light Shabbat candles. So the soul has a relationship with God. I understand, we explained in last chapter, in chapter 3, I use my chachman, bin and dat, my seichel, my intellect, to develop a relationship with God. And I now appreciate God and the idea of spirituality where I have this love and relationship with God, and now I'm going to light the Shabbat candles. But if I didn't light the Shabbat candles and all I had was this relationship with God, with using my intellect, where I understand God and I respect God and I love God, but I don't go and light the Shabbat candles, I'm only using the soul of Mendel Schwartz. Sylvia is only using her soul, her chachma, bin and das, and her emotions and love. And she says, I genuinely love God. There's no question about it. But if she's not lighting the candles, then she's not using the third garment, which is maisa, which is action. Because again, we said the garments are 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. Or if we're asked to pray 3 times a day, and I use my seichel, my intellect, and my emotions, and I have this relationship with God, I understand God, and I appreciate God, but I don't go and pray. So my soul is definitely intertwined with God, and I certainly have a relationship with God because I use all my those dimensions of my soul. but you're not using speech, because right now God asked us to do speech to pray. So again, we're certainly using my seichel, my midot. I'm using my soul that we explained in chapter 3. But chapter 4 is telling us, but what are you doing with it? How am I clothing my soul? Am I now going to clothe my soul with, on let's say Yom Kippur night, with clothing for me to go out to a baseball game? So the soul feels very Jewish. There's no question about it. The soul knows tonight's Yom Kippur. The soul knows that today's Shabbos. And I have a relationship with Shabbat. And I have a relationship. There's no question about it. But I'm not then clothing myself with the garments of Shabbat. I'm not then clothing my soul with the garment of speech, to speak about Shabbat, to pray, to make the kiddush, to make the blessing over the candles. Or using my hands to light the Shabbat candles, or using my feet to walk to synagogue. So that's why the garments, they're not the soul, they're just garments. Like we explained at the beginning, the garments is very connected to the soul, because like I explained, you can tell a woman how she dresses, you can tell from a man how he dresses. When I was already a student, I can tell if my teacher was wearing the brown suit or the blue suit. And we're 99.9% head on, spot on. But at the end of the day, the garments isn't the soul. When God infused and breathed life into Adam and Eve and into Mendel's words, he didn't infuse in me garments. He didn't infuse in me thought, speech, and action. He infused in me and breathed the soul of life. And this soul has 10 components called seichel and midot, intellect and emotions. Love, fear, and everything like we explained in chapter 3. But now you have to clothe the soul with garments, because how am I going to harness? Where am I going to take my soul? And what kind of thought am I going to use today? It doesn't have to be necessarily either or. I'm going to have a bad thought. Like after the Tanya class tonight, doesn't mean I'm going to have a bad thought unless I want to steal. So now you're taking a soul that had a relationship with God, and now you're using your thought garment, and you can use and figure out how to rip off somebody else. So you're using your thought garment or speech. So you're trying to rip off somebody using your speech, or you're going to a place where you shouldn't go. So you can take thought, speech, and action and do it for the negative or do it for sin. Or we could do what we're doing now. We're certainly using the thought, and we're thinking, and you're using our brain cells and clothing our intellect with the garment of thought. And we can study Torah like we're doing tonight. We're using our speech. And you took your feet and you came to the table, you took your fingers and you logged into Zoom. So this is all using your soul, which is connecting and have a relationship with God, is now using the garments of thought, speech, and action. Sometimes you could do thought, speech, and action, and it's like a middle ground. It's not good, it's not bad. Like I'm going to the Hollywood Bowl this Thursday night. I'm very excited to see Andrew Bocelli. He's the #1 chazan in my book. It's certainly not a sin to go see Andrew Bocelli, but I couldn't call it a mitzvah. God did not say, thou shalt go to the Hollywood Bowl with your wife and go with some friends to the VIP box, whatever the case is, or wherever we're going Thursday night. It's not a mitzvah. I mean, it's not a sin. It's not a mitzvah. Okay. So, but the point is that Mendel Schwartz, I'm taking my soul, I'm taking myself, and I'm enclothing my soul into what garments? A blue suit or a brown suit? In lipstick or not in lipstick? Am I going in baseball clothing, or am I going in a suit to go to Andrew Bocelli? So these souls, these garments, these levushim, levush, a levush means a garment according to Kabbalah, is really mucho importante. Because if all I have is my soul, and like I said, and I decide to do nothing, I decide not to go to synagogue, I decide not to go to Hollywood Bowl, I decide not to take out the garbage, I do nothing. So you're a soul that's not really functioning much. You're breathing, but you're not living. So chapter 4 with the garments is explaining to us, for you to have a life, for me to have a life, we have to be using machshava, dibra, maisa, thought, speech, and action, because it's impossible to fulfill any of the 613 commandments without using one of those three garments: thought, speech, or action. You can't put on tefillin without thought, speech, or action. You can't light Shabbat candles without thought. You don't have to have all three at the same time, but it's going to have to be one of the three. So when God said, I want every single soul, as an example, to respect and honor thy parents, or to keep the Shabbat, you're going to have to be using your thought, speech, or action to fulfill it. Maybe the thou shalt nots, like thou shalt not steal. So now I'm going to sit down and I'm not going to do anything. Okay, so there I'm not maybe using any of my garments. I'm not walking, I'm not talking, I'm not thinking, I'm just doing nothing. Okay, so maybe there, but of the thy shalt do something on Father's Day. Thy shalt like the Shabbat candles, thy shalt keep kosher, thy shalt, you fill in the blank. You're going to be using your machshava, dibra, maisa. So, why is this very important? Because when we said at the beginning of the class or in the email, what is greater, your soul or your garments? So naturally, of course it's my soul, because my soul is God, as we explained. Garments is something very external. You can have a person that's mute who's unable to speak. Does it mean he's not living? That she's not living? Or God forbid, a someone that doesn't have legs or arms, it means they're not living. At best, they're disabled, but they're living because they have a soul. They're functioning, they're breathing. You can't pull a plug on someone because yes, he's born without 2 legs or she doesn't have 2 arms. So the soul is intrinsically you. I'm identified by me. Who is me? My soul. Garments is external. Thought, speech, and action is external. People go to India and Tibet for 40 years. They don't say a word. They're on a fast, whatever that is, speech fast. And people are spending 18 hours a day cross-legged on top of a mountain. They do nothing. No action, no speech. I hope at least they're using the thought, right? The garment of thought to meditate. But the point is that levushim, garments, is external. Right? A person, one that can put on a blue suit, a brown suit. She can put on a pink shirt or a red shirt or a green shirt. It can change every day. It can change every hour. Some people are so moody, it can change every 5 minutes. So garments are external. Soul is me. So your first instinct, and my first instinct, is to say your soul reigns supreme. Your soul is God. But in chapter 4, which we're studying now about garments, it makes it a bit clearer to us that a soul that does not function with its garments, with thought, speech, and action, is somewhat of a dying soul, or somewhat of a mute soul. Because if a person says every day they have a relationship with God, because they meditate for hours every day, they're using their intellect, and they say they love God because their soul loves God, and it generated this relationship with God, and they love God, and I'm best friends with God, but they don't do anything. They don't speak about God. They don't do it. They don't have machshava, dibra, maisa. They don't have the garments. So what kind of person is this? He's squandering the life of his soul that God put down on the planet Earth for 120 years. So a soul without doing garments is somewhat lacking. Taking it a step further, angels also have souls. Angels which were there from the beginning of time, they have wonderful souls. They have great souls. God has a lot of faith in his angels. He sends his angels to heal Abraham after the circumcision. He sends an angel to go to Sarah and tell her that she's going to have a child. So we have a lot of beautiful stories about angels. God has a lot of faith in these angels. These angels are very holy. They're much more, in many ways, more refined spiritually and more closer to God than we are. They have tremendous soul. But angels do not have garments. They don't have thought, speech, and action. They don't have hands. They don't have legs. They don't have a physical brain. And thus, they cannot think, angels. They cannot meditate. Think of them like a robot. They're hardwired to listen to exactly as God programmed them. So when God creates an angel and he says, angel, now's the time to go to planet Earth and tell Abraham that he's going to be healed, or tell Sarah she's going to have a child. They're not using their thought, speech, or action. They're just going down as the robot that they are. Well, the truth is they are using their speech and verbalizing and telling Abraham, you're going to get better, or verbalizing and tell Sarah she's going to have a child. But that's it. They are unable to fulfill the 613 commandments, I should say. They are unable to put on tefillin. They are unable to light Shabbat candles. They're unable to question God. They're unable to truly understand God because they don't have a brain the way you and I have. Thus, they have no free choice. This is why one of the great exchanges in the Talmud that's recorded between God and the angels and Moses is that at Shavuos at Mount Sinai, when God was ready to give the Torah at Mount Sinai, the angels tell God, what are you doing? Such a holy Torah. This is your DNA blueprint of the world. You're going to give it to the human beings, to a man of flesh. Keep it up here in the heavens. We're spiritual like you are. And God says to Moses, to the defendant, what are you going to tell the prosecutors? What are you going to tell the angels to defend yourself, to lay claim on this great Torah? So what does Moses say? Moses doesn't say, well, we're also very spiritual, because he knows we stand no chance against the angels. Moses says, do you have an evil inclination? Moses says, it says don't steal in the Torah. It says don't kill in the Torah. It says don't covet thy fellow's possessions. You don't have an evil inclination. It says to honor thy parents. You don't have a mother or a father. You're not in this game. You're not in this circle. And the angels were quiet because they were hardwired robots listening to God, and they listen to a T. They're very good at what they do. But they don't have the thought, speech, and action to fulfill any of God's Torah commandments. They cannot. So only the Jewish people that have a soul, or Jewish and non-Jewish for that matter, and they're able to use their garments of thought, speech, and action to fulfill God's Torah, now, not only is their soul connected to God through the thought, speech, and action by fulfilling those commandments and fulfilling the Torah, and the thought, speech, and action enables the Jew, enables the person to have a relationship with God by using thought, speech, and action, but even more so, those garments allow the soul to go even higher. Because angels, they are where they are. They're very spiritual, they're very high, but they can't grow. Angels can't develop. They can't have a tighter relationship with God. They can't have a deeper relationship with God because they're robots. They have these great souls, but they are where they are. They're born and die the same. Because they were not given the Torah. They don't have a mother and a father. They don't have an evil inclination. They don't have free choice. They can never light the Shabbat candles. They can never keep the Shabbats. Only the human beings that have a soul and have the three garments, and they can use the thought, speech, and action, which enables them to do the mitzvah, or to pray, or anything else that the person is doing of using those three garments. Because again, in order to do a mitzvah, you have to use one of the three garments. You have to use machshava, dibur, or maisa, thought, speech, and action, or action. So by doing that, the soul has what we call an elevation. So when the soul came down 46 years ago to planet Earth, Mendel Schwartz's soul, I hope that I'm doing some good deeds with my thought, speech, and action, so that when my soul returns to its maker at 120, they'll say, wow, what a soul is coming back here to the heavens. This is a soul that did 20,000 tefillins. He did 2,000 favors to a person on the subway. He did 55 years of a blissful marriage. He raised 6 children. Obviously, all these things I'm doing with my thought, speech, and action. The angels are not in this equation again. Animals are not part of this equation again. They don't have those mitzvot. They have a soul. I don't want to not try here to put down animals. That's the subject. That's not the subject here. But they were not given the commandment. An animal was not given the commandment to put on tefillin. The animal doesn't have a commandment to honor thy parents. It may honor its parents, but it doesn't have that commandment. We, the human species, have those commandments, and the Gentiles have those 7 Noahide laws as well that they also have to keep. So they have commandments, and when they fulfill the commandments through thought, speech, and or action, the soul now is getting an elevation, like we explained, where ultimately after 120, people will say, make way. Hopefully they'll say, make way for the soul of Mendel Schwartz coming back up, or Sylvia, or Larry, or Shira, or Mariah, Mary, Sylvia, whatever the case is. Angels are stagnant. The same way they were thousands of years ago is the same way they are today. So it's these garments of machshava, dibur, and maisa, thought, speech, and action, which don't just allow you to know how I'm feeling today. Am I wearing a blue suit or a brown suit? These garments now are much deeper. They're enabling the soul to have even a deeper relationship with God, which from the outset sounded funny, because how do you compare a soul to a brown suit and a blue suit, to a woman who's wearing lipstick or not? But the garments, they're not just an expression now of how Mendel Schwartz is feeling, but they're enabling Mendel Schwartz to fulfill those commandments through thought, speech, and action. And that helps the soul have that relationship with God. So we don't want to say in conclusion that garments are greater than a soul, but we will say a soul without garments would make us maybe at best like angels. And we want to think of us a bit higher than that. That we are the human species that received the Torah and were mandated to do specific things on planet Earth. And of course, we can only do them through either thought, speech, and action. So that is the gist of chapter 4. I will end it there, and I will open up to any questions you have. And of course, you'll have to unmute yourself if you have any questions.
This is Andre with a question.
Fantastic. Could you speak a little louder? I don't hear you so well.
Sure. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What would you say is your call to action to us, the students, regarding the lesson about the garments and the 613 commandments?
Yeah, I think the call to action is not to ignore the externalities, things that we think are external and really aren't that important. Because the way we speak to somebody is important. We can't have this higher than thou attitude. Well, I have a soul, or I'm a human species, and I get it. The way we speak to somebody is important. And we also can't think that since I'm such a spiritual person, I don't need to pray because leave me alone, I have a relationship with God. No, sometimes God asks us to verbalize and enunciate and do things. So for me, when I studied this chapter 4, this put a certain thrust and emphasis on tangible, actionable mitzvot, commandments, where it's not enough just to use our intellect and study like an academia in university and to educate myself on what it means to be a good Jew or what it means to have faith in God, which is all important. We all have to study. But for me, chapter 4 was taking it and applying it and doing action. I don't mean that we have to now fulfill the 613 commandments. We all have to be 100% religious and things like that. But to me, the garments sort of on an academic level showed me that it's not enough just to put our head in the book, but we also have to do things. When I say do things, it doesn't necessarily mean just to, let's say, go to temple and use our feet. Like I say, sometimes doing things is even to study, which is using my intellect and using that intellect and using the garment of thought to meditate as well. So you can't think because last week I was full on and had a relationship with God. So like, I'm good now. I'm going to like, not plateau, but I'm just going to kind of go with the flow. No, every day we're mandated, just like every day we're mandated to breathe so I can live. Every day we have this sort of mandate to use our thought, speech, and action to have some sort of physical, actionable, tangible relationship with God. The same way in a relationship, whether you have a girlfriend or whether you have a wife, we can't say, because on my anniversary and I said, I love you to my wife and I gave her a beautiful ring, that's good enough. If I think that I want to have a good relationship every day of the year, every day I have to act like a mensch, speak to her like a mensch, take out the garbage if that's what she wants me to do, and things like that. So it's really about action being tangible. And this is also sort of a push, also, if I may, on even religious rabbis who are very, very religious in the synagogue or very religious in the school, but when you come home, you have to be also a very religious husband and speak to your wife in a very good, positive, religious way. Because if I'm only going to be a religious person in the synagogue and I'm studying for 8 hours a day, but I don't know what it means to be a good husband, then I feel bad for that religious person. Because shalom bayit, and also honoring thy parents. You know, many people, they pick and choose like a salad what they want to keep, from the Torah. So I feel that this chapter really kind of brings it all down to planet Earth for us. It's not just be a good Jew. Let's articulate that. What does that mean? It means to be a good wife. It means to be a good husband. It means when we say good Jew, it means it's not enough to what I did last week, but this week I also have to think about Shabbat, and I have to, let's say, put on tefillin with my hands or Shabbat candles. Again, to the best of our abilities. I'm not talking about making this class and imposing on everyone that we have to all of a sudden be Orthodox Hasidic Jews over here. But to me, that's what chapter 4 is. It's about the call of action. Because until here, chapter 1, 2, and 3, there was a little bit more of theology and philosophy of how we have the world and how we have our soul and what the soul biology is. Chapter 4 is the first time we're introducing the idea of, well, hold on a minute. We don't live in the heavens like the angels do. We actually have to do things. So, when I was a yeshiva student and I would on Fridays go out to the field when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, and we would go out with Shabbat kits and we would give 2 candles to a lady to light Shabbat candles, and we would find Jewish men and put tefillin on them. So many times, especially in Israel, and I would find a Jew and he would say, yes, I'm very Jewish. So I say, no, thank you. So now I want to put on tefillin. He says, no, I'm a Jew in my heart. Which means he has a Jewish soul, and that person is correct. He's 100% correct. I'm a Jew in my heart. I'm a Jew in my soul. No problem. So he's a Jew. But chapter 4 is telling us it's not enough. It's not enough that you're a Jew in your heart. You have to use the 3 garments, because this Jew in his heart, what is he doing to express himself today? Is he only going to go to restaurants and to Andrew Bocelli concerts? Or is he going to do something for his soul and put on the tefillin and do something for Shabbat and do something for his parents and things like that. So that's what chapter 4 and the garments really is about. It's about that. I didn't mean to get onto such a tangent over here with you, but I think chapter 4 is really, really important because it kind of brings it all down to planet Earth. And also, interestingly, which I think is important, is it also lets us know that if we do these things, it actually lets the soul go higher than it was before it came down to planet Earth. So that Jew who says, I'm a Jew in my heart, I want to tell him, you're right, you're a Jew in your heart, but don't you want to massage that soul? Don't you want your soul to return to its maker, even a greater, I'm a Jew in my heart? The only way that can be done is with those garments. Thanks for asking. Anybody else, or is that it?